Hey, Shalom, Akim, Shalom. Before I begin this lesson, I want to start off by giving all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachakorash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who taught me this truth, and Shalom to the hopeful elect. The title of this article says, Russia warns of consequences for striking Iran's nuclear facilities. Okay. It says Moscow warned against military action targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure following U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to bomb the country if it fails to reach an agreement. Okay, because there's this agreement that, Iran and the U.S. had, all right, and several other nations, basically where Iran was to stop pursuing nuclear capabilities. Okay, and, Donald Trump is basically saying, hey, look, y'all not following the rules. We're gonna bomb you. Okay, we're gonna bomb your facilities. Okay, just this is a trend that America does. If you don't agree with them or if you don't do things their way, they just bomb you, right? Okay, but let's continue. It says Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov criticized Trump's threats of military force, warning that escalation would have catastrophic consequences for the entire region. Okay, as you can see, man, these tensions are continuing to rise. All right, nothing is slowing down. Everything is going according to biblical prophecy, man. All these nations are gonna go at war. All right, into that third world war. Okay, it's gonna pop off and it's gonna get very spicy soon, man. Okay. Russia opposes coercive solutions, aggression, and military strikes, Ryabkov said. Yeah, because Iran and Russia are together, man. All right, just like you got China, just like you got North Korea, what was the other one? You got China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, all right, and then you got, BRICS, right, the economic aspect of it. Okay, you got a lot of these nations going in league with each other against this beast, against this whore, man. All right, which is clearly what the scriptures tell us will happen in these last days. It says he condemned Washington's threats against Iran as an attempt to impose its will on Tehran, which Tehran is just the capital city of Iran. It says cautioning that further escalation would only complicate the situation and require greater efforts in the future to contain the risks of a new conflict in the Middle East, where tensions are already at a peak. Okay, you could already see a lot of things is going on in the Middle East. All right, and in that whole region, that whole side of the world in general, there's a lot of things going on. Okay, a lot of wars going on. Okay, so now imagine, because here's the thing, no matter what happens, whether America bombs them or doesn't bomb them, all right, eventually Iran's gonna have that nuclear weapon, man, and it's only gonna heat things up even more, man. All right, Israel, the land of Israel, where these small hats are trampling our land, okay, because that land doesn't belong to those so-called white people over there. That land belongs to the real Israelites, okay? The so-called Negroes, so-called Latinos, and so-called Native Americans. We are the true Israelites of the Bible, okay? Which the scripture said we would be scattered throughout the world, okay? And here we are in America, not in our own land, right? As the scriptures say, man. So, the scriptures also say that those people over there in that land, they're not the people of the Lord, man. All they're doing is, stealing lands as they have always done, right? These so-called white people stole America, okay? You see they want to take Greenland. They want to take the Panama Canal. That's how they are, man. They're thieves and robbers and murderers, okay? But let's continue here. It says Moscow has previously offered to mediate between Washington and Tehran. Analysts suggest Russia is seeking to strengthen its diplomatic leverage by positioning itself as a key player in resolving the nuclear standoff. Russian officials believe they can offer security guarantees to both sides. similar to those provided during the 2015 nuclear deal negotiations. All right, so yeah, Russia is trying to act like, it's the police now. Okay, but we know that Russia is more with Iran than it is with the US, because the way the US does things, okay, why do you think Russia accused Ukraine? Basically, he justified himself in attacking Ukraine first because he said that, basically they were getting together with America, having their military being a little too close to his borders. And he said that's only a matter of time before they could attack Russia. So, hey, I'm going to strike first. So you could tell that, Iran, could have a similar thought process and Russia could side with them because America, why is America allowed to have nukes, but Iran not, you see? So, Russia, because that's the thing. And I'm not going to jump the gun. We're going to go into this real quick and you'll see what I'm talking about. It says Russian officials believe they can offer security guarantees to both sides, similar to those provided during the 2015 nuclear deal negotiations. Okay, which we're going to get that here in a separate tab. This is an article that says, what is the Iran nuclear deal? And we're just going to look at this summary real quick. It says signed in 2015 by Iran and several world powers, including the United States. The JCPOA placed significant restrictions on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Okay, and sanctions, we're going to get that. Okay, it's pretty much, it says a threatened penalty for disobeying a law or rule. Right, so the penalty usually from what I've seen is economic. All right, so America and all these nations that are in this deal, okay, who don't want Iran to have nuclear capabilities, they tax Iran on different things like their oil and, their banks and things of that nature. So basically crippling their economy if, based on the restrictions on their nuclear program. So basically they're allowing Iran to develop nukes, but at a very slow process and a very slow speed, okay? Because, they can't fully stop them. But at the same time, they don't want Iran to just, have all the liberty to create one, because literally they could create one probably within months or even sooner if America and all these nations don't keep taxing and punishing Iran. Okay, and even though they're punishing Iran, Iran is still following that some of these restrictions. Okay, because as it goes on, it says President Trump withdrew the United States from the deal in 2018. Okay, so, they had disagreements. Trump said, all right, you know what? We're just going to withdraw ourselves from this deal, claiming it failed to curtail Iran's missile program and regional influence. Yeah, so that, Trump's saying basically, this deal we made with him, like we took off their sanctions, and instead of Salakia, we took off their sanctions, and instead of them adhering to the program, they continued to make their, pursue their nuclear weapons. So Trump withdrew, right? It says Iran began ignoring limitations on its nuclear program a year later. So a year after America withdrew, basically America started taxing the shit out of Iran and, crippling their economy. So then Iran said, fuck it, we're just going to pursue our nukes all the more. Iran began ignoring limitations on its nuclear program a year later, right? So 2019. Washington and Tehran have both said they would return to the original deal, but they disagree on the steps to get there. You see, so they disagreeing on these steps. America saying, look, you got to pursue nukes this way, and then I'll take the taxes off, all right? But then Iran's like, no, I'm going to pursue nukes this way, and you take the taxes off. So they don't agree with each other, okay? Because, America's ultimately afraid of what could happen if Iran gains nukes. I mean, hey, these Arab nations, they don't play, man. Okay, they're willing to strap bombs to their chests and blow themselves up. So imagine you got a people with that attitude and they end up getting nukes. It's only going to fuck shit up for America that much more, which, again, that's in the scriptures. Is going to happen, all right? whether America wants to or not, no matter what type of treaties they make, no matter what type of deals they make to try to prevent it, nothing is going to change. Everything's going to continue to heat up. Okay, they're only delaying the inevitable, man. Okay, so let's just get this section real quick. It says, what did Iran agree to? Nuclear restrictions. Iran agreed not to produce either the highly enriched uranium or the plutonium that could be used in a nuclear weapon. All right, you see, so they put these blocks in front of them. Okay, it says, it also took steps to ensure that its Fordow, Natanz, and Arak facilities pursued only civilian work, including medical and industrial research. Okay, medical and industrial research. Okay, so things having to do not with military, not with war, but instead, you know, industrial. Okay, which we'll get that word industrial real quick. You know, relating to, characterized by industry, manufacturing, right? Medical. Okay, so that was part of the deal. But what does the scripture say? Okay, let's get the scripture real quick. Let's go to Joel chapter 3, and we're gonna start at verse 10, and it reads, actually we'll start at verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Verse 10, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. All right, so right here, okay, stop focusing on industry, medical, agriculture, work in general that builds up a society. Hey, stop focusing on that. Beat your plowshares into swords, right? So don't focus on industry, focus on weaponry, focus on military, and your pruning hooks, right, into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong, okay, which that is these smaller nations like Iran, for example. Iran back in the day would never buck up against America, all right? They were under the thumb of America. And even now, America is still the world's superpower, but now you're starting to see Iran is getting ready to puff at America. Once they get this nuclear weapon, man, they're going to be in the same boat as Russia, China, North Korea, you know, and many others who have nuclear capabilities, okay, to where basically they actually have a say against America, okay, because for the longest time, America's military just overpowered everybody and their nukes overpowered everybody else. All right, but now you have nations like Russia who has more nukes, better nukes than America, to where, you know, if it was an all-out war, okay, Russia would beat America essentially. Okay, and you know, like it says, let the weak say, I am strong. Okay, and we're gonna give you a few examples of this real quick. We're gonna grab just some headlines. Okay, and I brought these out in my other videos in the past, but I want to bring them up again. Okay, this is from January 6, 2025. It says, North Korea says new hypersonic missile will contain rivals. All right, and we go down here and we read the first sentence. It says, North Korea has claimed it fired a new intermediate range ballistic missile tipped with a hypersonic warhead, which will reliably contain any rivals in the Pacific region. Okay, and if you look on a map, the Pacific region, all right, is talking about America. Okay, so North Korea here is puffing their chest up, saying, I am strong, okay? But like I said, back in the day, North Korea would never puff at America, but now it is, because now they have nuclear capabilities. All right, now let's look at this one. Okay, this is from one of Russia's allies. It says, Russia can destroy the U.S. in 1 hour. Putin ally brags. You see, and this was published February 5th, 2024, a whole year ago. Okay? You see that? Okay, and that's spiritual, can destroy the U.S. in 1 hour. We can get that real quick. In 1 hour, Okay, Revelation 18 and 17. Okay, here we go. Revelation 18 and 17. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all company and ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off. Verse 18, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? You see? Russia can destroy the U.S. in 1 hour. Putin ally brags. You see? Just like the scriptures say, man. So you got Russia puffing. You got North Korea puffing up. Okay? And this is from the mouth of Putin himself. It says, Putin warns the West, Russia is ready for nuclear war. You see? And one more that I have here. It says, China says, okay, and the one from Russia, Slovakia, that was March 14th, 2024. Okay? A year ago. Okay? This one is this month, March 5th, 2025. China says it is ready for any type of war with the U.S. Xi Jinping. All right, let the weak say, I am strong. Let the weak say, I am strong. Let's read that again. Joel 3 and 10. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. And see? So that's what's getting ready to happen, man. All right, let's go back to the original article here. Talking about Iran, you know. It says Russia warns of consequences for striking Iran's nuclear facilities. Okay, which this is the one we've been reading. Was published April 2025. So within these last 4 days. All right. It says, yeah, the 2nd of April. Okay. So let's go down. All right. So now we know what this 2025 nuclear deal was. It says Moscow and Washington have reportedly discussed through contacts in Saudi Arabia the possibility of Russia facilitating dialogue on Iran. However, Trump's increasingly aggressive rhetoric has raised concerns in Moscow. Ilya Vaskin, a researcher at the Center for the Study of the Middle East, the Caucasus, and Central Asia at HSE University, said issuing ultimatums is a hallmark of the Trump administration's negotiating style. According to Vaskin, Washington is trying to pressure Iran into a swift agreement and secure a new nuclear deal on its own terms. Okay, which is not going to work, man. Because like the scriptures say, man, this place ends in fire. So, stopping Iran from getting nukes is not going to work. All right, it says Lev Sokolchik, a senior researcher at the Center for Comprehensive European and International Studies at the HSE University, noted that Iran has made significant progress in its nuclear program and missile capabilities in recent years. He argued that Trump is trying to curb Iran's military ambitions, which could threaten interests in the region. That's exactly what he's trying to do. But again, it ain't going to work, man. All right, they already got their missiles. All they need is to put a nuclear warhead on the missile. And that ain't hard, man. All right? America thought they had everybody under their nose. Little did America know, all these nations have been developing nukes, man. Says Sokolchik warned that Iran could develop a nuclear weapon within months. Okay, and that's the big part of this article that I wanted to bring out. It says a scenario that deeply concerns both the United States and Israel, right? Because we know the two are together, right? Them small hats. And we know how much Iran hates them small hats. All right, they fired regular missiles. All right, just regular bombs at Israel. All right, and the way it looked like an onslaught looked like a giant hailstorm over there. That place was fucked up, man. All right, and they their Iron Dome couldn't stop it. So imagine if Iran develops these nukes, man. Judging by Israel's attitude, these small hats, they're gonna piss off Iran, and they're gonna get destroyed real quick, man. Okay, and ultimately it's gonna lead to both America and Israel, all right, being destroyed by thermonuclear destruction. All right, Israel, the land, not the people. Okay, because we are the people. All right, again, us so-called Negroes, so-called Latinos, and so-called Native American Indians. Okay. It says, Sokolchik warned that Iran could develop a nuclear weapon within months, a scenario that deeply concerns both the United States and Israel, right? Within months, okay? Within months. Shit, they could have it tomorrow, okay? Because they haven't been following that 2015 agreement, for over a year. Okay, it was, what was it, 2018 when they stopped, so 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, so 7 years. Hey, they probably already have it. Okay? But yeah, man, with that, I want to grab some precepts. Okay, like we were reading here in Job chapter 3 and verse 10. We're going to read that again. It says, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. So yeah, again, during that agreement, Iran was told to focus its efforts on building its industry and its, building themselves, their medical and, other aspects, and to stop focusing on their military so much. All right. But no, this scripture says, nah, beat your plowshares into swords, meaning, stop focusing on industry and manufacturing and focus on swords, all right? Which is symbolic for, these nukes, okay? And you're pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Because again, these nations are all puffing at America. North Korea, Russia, Russia's allies, China. You see? Verse 11, it reads, assemble yourselves and come, all you heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh. Let the heathen be awakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. You see, and all the heathen, we know the word heathen is talking about these Gentile nations, right? These Arabs, these so-called white people, these these Africans, also known as Hamites, okay? Like I said, Ishmaelites, which are the Arabs, okay? Chinese, Japanese, right? The Moabites and the Ammonites, okay? All these other nations that are not Israelites. Again, who are the Israelites? So-called Negroes, so-called Latinos, and so-called Native Americans. All right? So with that, we're gonna go into Second Esdras, because this is all biblical prophecy, man. Iran getting nukes, and all these Arab nations coming together and scaring the shit out of other nations, and ultimately, they're gonna have a hand in fucking America up. So, without any further ado, we're gonna go Second Esdras, and we're gonna go to Second Esdras 15. And we're going to start at verse 28. It says, behold, an horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east. Okay, so it's talking about over there in the Middle East, because this will be the major gathering place of all these different nations for that destruction. All right, verse 29. Where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots. All right, the dragons of Arabia is talking about these Arab nations, because Arab means Irab, okay, in the Hebrew, which means mixture. So these nations are mixtures of different groups, but they will come together, okay? It continues. And the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. All right, because they're gonna fear, because they're gonna come with a large army. Okay, verse 30. Also, the Carmanians raging in wrath shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood. And with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. Okay, so this word Carmanians is specifically talking about the Iranians or the Persians, right? The modern day Iranians. Okay, so Iran is going to be angry. They're going to get triggered. Okay, and we're going to grab a precept to that. This is Jeremiah 50 and verse 40. Salakia. Jeremiah 50, verse. We're going to start at verse 45. It says, "Therefore hear ye the counsel of Yahweh, that he hath taken against Babylon," right? Babylon being America, "and his purposes that he hath proposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them." You see, so the least of the flock is talking about these Israelis, these small hats, the so-called white people that call themselves JEWS, but they're not. All right, they're imposters, and they're Amalek, the tribe of Amalek, and they're also known as the least of the flock. Okay, they're going to draw them out. They're going to piss off these nations, and they're going to cause the destruction of America. It says, "Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them." Whose habitation? The habitation of Babylon, also known as America. All right, and then verse 46 continues, "At the noise of the taking of Babylon, the earth is moved, and the cry is heard among the nations." Right, Babylon meaning America. So the taking of Babylon, right? This man's kingdom, America, getting taken down. All right, by what? By these thermonuclear missiles, man. Okay, and we're going to grab a word here. At the noise of the taking of Babylon, the earth is moved, right? The noise, right? Because these nuclear missiles are going to be loud, right? And the word moved, we're going to get that in the Hebrew.
Strong's H 7493. Ra'ash. Ra'ash.
Ra'ash, which means to quake, to shake. You see? Because the scriptures say there's going to be an earthquake so large that's never been and never will be, roughly paraphrasing, right? It's never happened before, okay? And the scriptures say the earth will rock or will shake to and fro like a drunkard. Because when you have all these missiles landing at one time here in America, it's going to cause a gigantic earthquake, okay? Which this precept is going into specifically what 2nd Ezra's 15 and 30 is going into, all right? We're going to read it again. It says, "Also the Carmanians," right, which are the Iranians, Iran, "raging in wrath shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them." With who? With these other Arab nations, man. These other Arab nations are going to come together with Iran. Okay, and it says, "and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians." All right, who are the Assyrians? All right, this is talking about the modern day Americans. All right, the Babylon, Salakia, modern day America. Okay, the daughter of Babylon. Okay, because Assyria had our people in captivity. All right, the same way these Americans have the Israelites today in captivity. Okay, so we're going to read that part again, that last part, "and join battle with them." Right, Iran and all these Arab nations, they're going to shoot their missiles, right, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. Okay, showing you that these Arab nations are going to play a key role in taking down this man's world, this man's kingdom. Okay, because it's not just Iran and these Arab nations, but you're also going to have Russia. All right, Russia's going to lead the charge. You got to have China, North Korea. All right. And also, again, America's own allies, which I say that on every video too. Okay, which there's scriptures talking about that. Okay. But yeah, man, and then we're gonna keep going here. We're gonna get verse 31. But yeah, man, something's gonna happen. It's gonna trigger these Islamic countries, all right, these different regions to come and fight against they're gonna be fighting over there in the Middle East. All right. And eventually that's going to lead to all of them shooting their missiles at America, because they're going to waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. So you got America here. Let's have let's get a map here. So you got America, right? Right here. All right, we know Russia, China, North Korea, all these nations, America's allies, okay? And then Iran and the Arabs, right? They're going to shoot, you know, they might divide it up. They might say, all right, you know, Iran and them, you take 1/3. All right, Russia, you take 1/3. You know, China, North Korea, you take 1/3. You know, America's allies, you know, just kind of get the you know, get the coasts first so nobody could escape. You know, whatever it may be, okay? They're gonna waste a portion of this land, man. Okay. So now we're gonna read verse 31. It reads, "Then shall the dragons have the upper hand." Okay, again, these dragons are these Arab nations. It says, "Remembering their nature, and if they shall turn themselves, conspiring together in great power to persecute them." Okay, because they're going to remember their nature because, like the book of Genesis chapter 16 says, we're going to start with verse 11. Genesis 16:11, "And the angel of Yahweh said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael." So this is the beginning of the so-called Arab race, okay, the Ishmaelites. They're the Ishmael is the progenitor of that race, all right, and his name was called Ishmael because Yahweh hath heard thy affliction, okay, but watch what verse 12 says. "And he will be a wild man." Speaking of these Arabs, okay, that's the people that are, you know, they'll strap bombs to their chests, go into a crowd and blow themselves up. All right, they thrive on guerrilla warfare. Okay, these are wild people, man. Okay, they don't give a fuck. It says his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Okay, you can see how everyone's against these Arabs because you know, there's sanctions and they're putting all these taxes on them to, hey, don't get nukes. Hey, what's gonna happen when these crazy motherfuckers get nukes? Okay, everything's gonna speed up that much more, man. All right, because as soon as Israel does some bullshit, right, these small hats, it's gonna set off these Arabs, man. It's gonna set them off. All right. So yeah, man, this is gonna be a fearful sight when this happens, and it's gonna lead to the destruction that much quicker. So, you know, like we were going over here, all right, at the end of this article, you know, I'm gonna read it again. It says, "Sako-Chik warned that Iran could develop a nuclear weapon within months, a scenario that deeply concerns both the United States and Israel." All right, because we know that that's according to prophecy. These two lands get destroyed in the Third World War by nuclear missiles. Okay, and Iran, you know, is going to play a big role in that. Okay, and they're pretty much there. You see? So yeah, man, this is deadly serious, man. It's, you know, for you Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, all right, this is a call to repentance because biblical prophecy is moving at light speed. Okay, and the end of this man's world, Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, is here. It's at the door, man. All right, there's nothing Trump or anybody could do to stop the nuclear world war, the destruction of, you know, their kingdom, their power structure, their wickedness. Okay, because it's the prophecy of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. All right. So with that, I pray that this lesson was edifying to the hopeful elect. I'm going to finish by giving all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachakorash, and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who taught me this truth. And shalom to the hopeful elect. Shalom wa abad babal. Shalom.